Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have a very informative upload to share with you. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. The merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative and exciting uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon. And finally, last but definitely not least, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. And folks, they do matter. Now, I've taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's upload, shall we? All right, before we jump into today's upload, something I need to share. My channel, or the amount of uploads and the amount of work that I've been doing, is going to slow down for a little bit. Many of you have been with the channel for a while and know that I was diagnosed with a terminal illness about 11 years ago. I didn't beat it. It kind of went into a remission stage, and I get blood work every 6 months to make sure that everything's okay. I was diagnosed with PNH, paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria. It's a very rare blood disorder. And as of the most recent lab result was not what it normally is. And I need to take some stress out of my life. My doctor said, who is my primary, is my specialist. I've got two daughters, 18 and 15-year-old, and I need to think of them. I will continue to upload daily, but I'm going to slow down a heck of a lot. Probably 2 videos a day instead of 3 and 4. The live stream will be every Saturday night at midnight still. But I just need to take a little bit of time and until my doctor can figure out what the next step is. But I just wanted to let people know, because people are used to having a bonus. People are used to having, this, and that. And I can't do it as of right now. I'm still going to try to put 2 videos out a day. First upload, and then a second at the end of the day. But I just needed to share that with you guys. So thank you. And let's jump into today's upload. All right, guys. Today's first part of the upload, it's going to be a couple different parts. I want to discuss a little bit about the Julian Sands, and then an update on Victor, and then a couple of other little things that I've got set for you all. The Julian Sands case is strange. For those of you who are not familiar, he is a actor, But he's not just an actor. He is a very outdoorsy kind of person. You'll see why right here. Julian Sands' body found in California mountains, where actor disappeared. Human remains discovered near Mount Baldy and transported to coroner's office for identification. Hikers found human remains in a Southern California mountain area where the British actor Julian Sands disappeared 5 months ago, authorities said. The body was discovered at about 10 a.m. on Saturday in the wilderness near Mount Baldy in a San Gabriel Mountains and was transported to a coroner's office for identification next week. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department said in a statement, the hikers contacted the Fontaine Sheriff's Station after they discovered human remains about 40 miles, or 65 kilometers from the 65-year-old actor's North Hollywood home in L.A. Additional details were not immediately available. Sands is an avid hiker, a mountaineer best known for his roles in A Room with a View, The Killing Fields, Boxing Helena, was reported missing on January 13th after setting out on the peak that rises more than 10,000 feet east of LA. The region was pounded with severe storms during the winter, turning snow to ice, and 2 other hikers fell and died of their injuries between Christmas and late January. After Sands went missing, the authorities warned climbers they should be trained in alpine conditions, carrying ice axe and crampons. If you don't know, don't go, they said. 16 searches had been launched since January, during which time more than 500 hours have been spent looking for Sands, who was close friends with fellow actor John Malkovich. Malkovich described Sands as a inveterate mountain climber / hiker who was always tramping off to Kilimanjaro or Antarctica or the Andes or Alps. He's also climbed in Greenland and Asia. On Friday, his family released the first statement since Sands disappeared. We continue to hold Julian in our hearts with bright memories of him as a wonderful dad, husband, explorer, lover of nature and the arts, and as the original and collaborative performer, the statement said. Last weekend, the County Sheriff's Department mustered 80 search and rescue volunteers, deputies, and staff to continue looking for Sands, with the support of 2 helicopters and a drone crew for areas inaccessible to ground crews. Some areas include steep terrain and ravines that still have more than 10 feet of ice and snow. The fresh search revealed no trace, and Sands Sheriff's Office said the efforts would continue, but in a limited capacity. Sands was married to journalist Evgenia Sitkowitz and had 3 adult children. Within weeks of Sands going missing, his brother Nick Sands, a financial advisor who lives and works in a North Yorkshire town where they had grown up, said, I know in my heart that he is gone. However, sibling rivalry being what it is, it would be great. It would be just like him to walk out there and prove me wrong. So I did a little digging into things. I found it interesting, and you guys can look into this as well. First thing that popped into my head was they said that it got hit with massive snowstorms. Well, it is elevated, right? But I went and I Googled the weather for January of 2023. The day he went missing, it was 53 degrees with a low of 43, excuse me. Weeks following and before, the weather varied from low 40s to high 50s. There was periodic storms, but nothing like what we have in the Adirondacks. Or, Montana, Canada, Maine, Vermont. It's southern LA. But you have to keep in mind that the elevation also does make it that there is snow and ice certain times of the year there, when down lower there may not be. But that was the weather for Mount Baldy, California in January, not San Bernardino County. I specifically typed in Mount Baldy, and that's what it gave me. And it was specific. It was not anything but that. They found his body where they had already searched. How many times is that said in these very strange disappearances? Look at Richard Timothy Honecker. Disappeared in Tazewell, Virginia. Folks were looking for him. They looked in this culvert a year before. A year later, they find him in the culvert. The Michigan hunter that went missing. Not Michigan. Minnesotan hunter that went missing. Also, he has been dead for 5 months. His family is not going to be able to do an open casket for the simple reason that his partial body there was scattered in different locations. I made a phone call to the San Bernardino Coroner's office and asked that question. How was the body intact? Just said I was an independent reporter. Many of you guys have seen it in action when I do it. I usually record it, but I couldn't do that today. I was actually driving when I made the call. I was driving while putting this part of the upload together. I was texting and printing stuff out at home, just sending it to an email so it would print out and be ready. But his body was just, it makes no sense. They searched there a ton of times. And those of you who have been following this case, a lot of you have. And this is my first time talking about it because I didn't want to talk about it until I knew that there was something strange about the whole case. And the second they found his body, and I read that first news report, found in same location, searched previous. And I'm like, how the hell did they miss him? Now, notice that news article said searching was hard because of snow and ice in certain locations still. Yeah, there is, but that's not even where he was found. You can map it. You can look up and it'll show you the map where his body was found. It was nowhere near where the coldest and worst winter weather would have been in that Mount Baldy region. Do I think it was a Dogman? Do I think it was a Bigfoot? I don't know. But it's strange, and that's why I'm covering it. And I've never said that any of these attacks, Brenda Hamilton, any kind of, any of these attacks are Dogman, unless I've heard it from people who are reputable in that area, like Corey Godsey, the young man, 13-year-old who passed away in Knott County, Kentucky. The news told us that there was a very strange canine that dragged him 300 feet up a cliff and then tore him apart. And then I had interviewed a family friend, and they said that Homeland Security was on the scene. And, so this is very strange disappearance and ending to it as well. So I'll keep my eye on it and let you guys know. But could it be a Dogman? Yes. Could it be a Bigfoot? Yes, it could be. Could it be an accidental death? I don't know. I don't feel that. I really don't. Because if it was, they would have found him 10 other searches they did before. I mean, they were really, this is a famous actor. You bet your tooties that they were looking for him. So I just wanted to share that with you. Like I said, I didn't want to share it until I knew that he had been found. That way I could really get some more detail out of it. So let's jump into tonight's second part. So today's second part of the upload, a update on Victor. Sunday, I texted Victor and I asked, "How are you?" And he proceeds to say, "Not good." Lets me know that it's scorching hot where he is in New Mexico and that we got it, but we're going to have an issue getting it out. He did not elaborate on that part, but he did say that it wasn't one of theirs and it was a werewolf, which is strange because many of you know that per Victor, that the werewolves are usually not as dangerous or aggressive as the Dogman. I guess at one point in New Mexico, there was some animal attacks going on, and I believe a couple farmers had seen something. For some reason, they sent 9 agents down there, and 9 were found torn apart. Victor initially thought it was the cartel. And when he had texted me that Saturday a while back, like we were going to set up and do an interview, he had got sent back down because a farmer had found a print. He had been looking for any kind of sign for this creature and could not find anything. The farmer did. He found it, got the hunt going on, and bagged it. Didn't tag it because it wasn't tagged. At first, when we were talking, I asked him, I said, even though you thought it might be the cartel, do you think possibly it's using cartel tunnels to travel back and forth? I mean, we've heard that they are intelligent, so why wouldn't it take advantage of something like that? I don't know the reason why it's going to be hard to get it out of where it's at. Either it's in a public location or close to a public location. I just said, burn it. and I hadn't gotten a response back from him, but hopefully I'll be hearing from him here in the near future and we can get an interview going on with him. I'd like to do another call-in. I really would. They went really good and they went really well, and a lot of you guys wouldn't mind doing another one. So maybe I can talk him into doing one of those with us when he comes back and share the New York and New Mexico encounters with us, or hunts with us, excuse me. But yeah, so there's the update on Victor. I wanted to share that with you all. That way you guys were in the loop and no one was asking me any more questions that I don't have the answer to. But yeah, so. And today's subscriber submitted experience. The subscriber wishes to remain anonymous, so we will just call her C. Here goes. A while ago, I asked during your live if anyone had heard of Bigfoot making owl sounds. You relayed an experience about someone who had referred to Bigfoot as owl people. I felt like that kind of made everything click in my head, as if what I had heard, what I call not owls on many occasions, finally made sense. Well, that changed. I suppose it's childish, but I have always been careful to introduce myself when entering the woods, and then to excuse myself as I leave, with a short greeting. It's not my home, you know. Maybe that's why all of this is happening. Maybe I'm stupid, or maybe I'm making friends, I don't know. I started hiking out there because I wanted to teach myself how to do things, camping and hiking, and hopefully shave off some pounds while trying my best to feel like a Disney princess. I didn't expect to dive headlong into the paranormal or whatever this may be. Everything was fun in the woods. They were gorgeous before nightfall. There were several other people on the trails, but otherwise it was just another evening in my favorite woods. For clarity, this is a small conservation area of partly hunting and partly non-hunting land located about a half-hour drive from where I live in North Florida. Maybe 3 or 4 homes are scattered on the outer edges of the forest, and a 4 single-family campsite is scattered over several square miles. 2 of said campsites are a 3-ish mile hike into the woods away from any kind of civilization. It was one of those hike-in sites that I stopped at to explore that day. People very rarely camp out there, so there was no one to distract or watch me look dumb. Night had fallen, and all the usual sounds of the Florida forest rose around me. It was time for me to make my very aware but mostly carefree way back to the main trail, and give this unfamiliar segment another pass, so as to pick up all of the glow sticks that I had left as markers on my way in. I do this every time I'm on a new trail, so as to familiarize myself with that segment as best I can in the daytime and at dark. Once I had made that loop, I turned to walk it again and get back to the main trail. Several paces later, I heard what sounded like something as big as an elephant, stepping purposefully. Just 2 steps that sounded too human for my comfort. But mind you, there shouldn't be any people in this area. All of this happened between hunting season for that zone. I made sure of it, just in case I were to get lost in the section that borders the hunting area. Sure, someone could have parked and walked out there without me knowing, but how would they get out to where I was and back several yards into the scrub without making any more noise than 2 steps? I mean, at first, all was still, and the night sounds were humming. Then out of nowhere, this huge, heavy walking sound. I could hear the crunch of the heel-to-toe motion, and then the sound of the palmetto frond branch being bent and squeaking against another tree or another frond beside it, as if something had pushed it out of its way. Then there was a complete and utter silence, except for a couple of lonely crickets in the distance. It must have only been about 40 yards over my right shoulder and into the scrub. I snapped my head in the direction immediately while continuing to walk away from it, but of course there was so much scrub brush that grew up after the last controlled burn so that I couldn't see anything. I mean, it's about 5 to 6 feet in most places and way too dense to try and walk through. However, the trail is so wide that you can easily see over the scrub until the trees become too thick and block the horizon. Not to mention, it was that darkness between sunset and moonrise, where even the people with intelligent eyesight have a hard time. Nothing, and I do mean nothing, makes 2 steps in such a particular manner, and that loudly that I've heard besides maybe that weird friend we all have that has never seen a hiking trail in their life. I mean, I could actually hear a leg being raised, a foot being placed, and then another leg raised and another foot placed. It couldn't be anything of normal size, given the time between the footfalls. The sounds of the movements were methodical. For example, I watched multiple deer barreling through those palmettos in that park, and they were practically silent compared to the racket. What could step over that scrub brush anyway? That was all for the night. After this, however, I began to figure out that there seemed to be a pattern to this location of where the whip poor willow sound and where the knot owl are stepping. When hiking out there, I try to leave as soon as I hear the first whippoorwillow. If I hadn't left by then, I'd just try to walk along the most direct routes, and most open trails, and to kind of stay more north and west, moving toward the parking area of the clusters of their calls as I make my way back to the car. Their second encounter. Several days later, I returned but stayed on the main trail to explore a little further south, toward, but not into, the hunting section than I had been before. This time I began to have what I guess people would classically call being watched feeling, but not really. It was more like I was aware of another awareness, if that makes sense. Not a malicious, not really creepy, just aware. Like you are when you're sitting in church and a person in the choir is staring at your ugly sweater until you look up and notice them. Soon I passed through a very quiet patch of woods along the middle of the trail segment that I was exploring. It wasn't really any quieter than what was normal for the woods during the transition between afternoon and evening. Just kept walking, looking around and enjoying the evening. There was a deer on the trail, nibbling on some kind of grassy plant. Somehow, I had crept upon it by accident and scared it into the brush. It was silent as it ran into the scrub brush on my right to the west of the trail, until many paces later when it sounded like it had coughed and then hit something or fell down hard. I heard a bit of leaf litter rustling, and then nothing for a while. A little less than a mile later, I started hearing a very light rustling sound in the scrub brush that absolutely covers the area on either side of the entire trail. The brush was maybe knee-high in this area. I'm 5'7". This was when things began to feel a little uncomfortable because it sounded so close that I should definitely be able to see whatever was making the racket. However, again, I couldn't see any animals, nor could I see which brushes were moving, even though it was still daylight. It sounded like maybe a lot of small and light footsteps moving slowly toward me from my left, which would be going east. These were not bipedal footfalls. Also, there was no start or stop, like you hear if an armadillo is rooting around or something. This was the one time I really paused to look for what I was hearing. That daylight gave me more confidence to pause and look, but it didn't help me see anything useful to determine what was around me. Remember, all of these events, except the deer running off to the west, happened in the eastern section of the non-hunting area, so it really shouldn't have been people creeping upon me from the brush for many reasons. Also, everything happened between the hours of 1500 and 0200 hours, as that's really the only time that I would go there. When I noticed that, whatever they were kind of surrounding me from behind and to my left. I had heard a series of 5 croaking sounds. If some kind of frog was the size of a dog, it might sound like this. Only one croaking sound came from each location where I heard the rustling, and each croak happened in order, in a line that formed a half circle toward my left and my rear, but not crossing the trail. This same pattern had happened with the not owl noise a few weeks back, but the owl noises were maybe 100 yards away from me, whereas these croaking sounds were maybe 20 to 30. The croak sounded more like more benign than those not owl calls, as if they were children during the morning roll call, or maybe they were just checking each other's position and trying to follow me close for some reason. I don't know. I'll remember this a bit later. I again was keeping walking, and once in a while look briefly around, as I usually do, to just take my stock of my surroundings. I didn't hear any croaks anymore that day, and I never heard the rustling like that. I was rustling like I was being approached or followed. The atmosphere returned to the beautiful, serene forest I loved, but the entire hike was still a little uncomfortable because there was a lot of deer out. I think I saw a total of 7 during that 4-hour walk. That doesn't really happen out here, and so early in the year. So it made me wonder, what's making it move around? On my very end of my hike out, maybe a half a mile from the end of the trail where my car was parked, there was one more strange thing. I saw a shadow figure. It was very difficult to describe, and this is the part that I'm most hesitant to share. I don't want to appear to discredit myself, nor do I want to jump onto a metaphorical and overfilled bandwagon of people who say they are psychic or sensitive or whatever. But no joke, I see spirits and have all my life. Several people I know would happily confirm that. If you want to talk to them at some point. That being said, I know that spirits appear like to me, whether it be in waking life, dreamscape, or astral. But this was different. It was like both physical and spirit type appearance were overlaid on the same creature, meaning that shadow figure had a physical dimension to it as well as it could be considered a shadow body. It reacted when I noticed it. When it noticed I was looking at it, almost like it had been casually watching me all along while believing I couldn't see it. It turned to duck behind some brush beside it and caused the foliage to move like movement was going out of style. Out of the things to convince me that these events are real, the main reason I don't question any of this is that several places earlier on the trail I had seen some birds from the bush to tree. These birds caused the foliage to move for a second before I saw this shadow figure move, which caused the foliage to move around it as well. Spirits don't move physical things like that. Physical things do. The physical form of this entity was very blurry, but seemed pitch black and almost a sag around the shadow body. Unfortunately, I couldn't see any features, but it seemed to be lacking in dimension, similar to how wearing a hoodie would hide the shape of your body. As for the shadow body of this thing, I definitely saw everything from what I suppose is its knees up. The head of whatever this was must have been around 9 to 10 feet, because this all happened at the place on the trail where I had previously stepped off to do my business hours ago. I saw no features except streams of green, grayish shadows lifting off its head like locks of hair. The arm flexed and bent like a skinny human to push the foliage away. The left leg bent and extended to step over brush. The whole body hunched to duck back below some lower branches on the trees and stood between them. Time felt so slow in that moment of seeing it, but I know I only took 2 steps because I was on autopilot, trying to get out while staying hyper aware. I was so close, maybe like 50 feet, but I couldn't make anything out. No features at all, as if it was just blurry yet kind of glowy, tall, skinny shadow to look at. As soon as it was behind the tree, that was it. No more sound or movement. This is the only unusual creature, if I can call it that I've actually seen to date. All right. I'm going to share. I'm not going to go any further on this. Not because I don't want to, but because I want to talk about something else. I don't think that what they saw was a shadow. I think it was what people are calling this glimmer man, or predator-like creature. I've had multiple subscribers share encounters that resemble this. You can see it move in the shadows. You can see this creature not distinctly, but you can see it. You know something's there. It's watching you. You can feel it. But you can't make everything out. But she could. She could make out an arm, and she could make out a leg, and it was moving the brush. So, to me, that's not a spirit. To me, that tells me that would be like the Glimmer Man. These very strange creatures that people are catching. I don't know if they're real. I seen one video that kind of had me thinking that video was real, where the couple was running from something, but then I heard that was from a horror movie. I'm not sure. I looked for it and I couldn't find it. But there are people, Native American people, have seen these things for hundreds of years. There was one fella that reached out to me, and he was a security guard at a very sacred location for Native American people, and he kept seeing this one creature stalking him. So I think that's what she was seeing. Also, I wanted to talk about really quick about the owl men that she mentioned. That's not what he, this person kind of got it wrong a little. There was a gentleman who lived out west, and he was having issues with a Dogman, a huge Dogman, like 8.5 feet tall, but and vicious, to where he built a 12-foot stockade fence around his home and had a spotlight. But he also said that at night he could hear Bigfoot hunting deer in the woods using an owl-like sound, and he called them the owl people. because of the sound that they were making. He knew they were Bigfoot. He just, and I was like, what do you mean owl people? And he's like, no, let me correct it. They don't fly. They're a Bigfoot, but they're using this kind of sound echoing back and forth to each other while they're tracking the deer that are moving throughout the woods. And I'm like, I see. Okay. But yet, this was on his property as well. And he's getting stalked all around his whole area. The strange thing is these Bigfoot are living there, multiple of them. And the Dogman is still messing with him and with the Bigfoot, which I thought was completely insane. We had talked for like an hour and a half, almost 2 hours. We ended the phone call. We were going to do an interview. I called him 2 days later, and his phone was disconnected. And he wasn't a kid. He wasn't a teenager. He wasn't in his 20s. He wasn't in his 30s. This is a 50, 60-year-old man. So I was like, what the heck happened to this poor guy? And it was just one of the strangest things I've ever had happen. You know, talking to this guy for a while, and then I'm not able to get in touch with him. So anyway, guys, I'm going to end the upload with that. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It's been a rough couple of days. Lack of sleep. I'm getting hot. I'm going to try to rest a little more. And that way, maybe it is lack of rest, and I can get back on my game here. But anyway, guys, stay safe, happy, healthy. Keep an eye on your family, pets, children, everything. Be hyper vigilant while you're in the woods. These things are out there and they're watching us. This lady just shared that with us. They're watching. It might not even be a Bigfoot, a Dogman, a crawler, a hide behind. It might be like one of these glimmer men that are hiding, coming out of portals. I think they come out of portals, these things. But that's just me. Maybe that's what I saw while I was up in the Adirondacks. Who knows? Anyway, guys, thank you for all your support, and God bless.